Welcome to Finance. This is week 8. I'm your online instructor, Diana Block. And this week, we're going to talk about the weighted average cost of capital. And so let me give you just some background on that. And we all know that a corporation, it's a separate legal entity under the law, but it doesn't have any money of its own. It has other people's money. The corporation has the shareholders' money and their creditors' money. So the funding for a corporation and their businesses and product lines, etc., comes from either money they borrowed from the bank, which we know is debt, or the investments that shareholders have made, which is equity. And it could be common equity, which is the ownership stock, or it could be preferred stock, which is just an investment that they make. It doesn't have ownership, but it provides them with guaranteed dividends. But in any case, the money that we're using is other people's money. So we talked about last week that we have to select projects that are going to give us the greatest return so that we can, A, meet our obligation to the people whose money we're using, and B, to actually make a profit and grow the organization. So we want to take their money and invest it in projects that are going to give us the greatest return. That's what we talked about last week. And so what we have talked about was that we need to get the cash flows, and we can talk about the payback period, the internal rate of return, the net present value. And so in order to make those calculations, though, we have to know what our money actually costs. What is it actually costing us to use other people's money? So that way we'll know what kind of costs or what kind of returns we have to have on the projects that we invest in. So in order to answer that question, we have to start talking about the capital structure. Which the capital structure, we're talking about how much debt do we have, how much equity, how much preferred stock. And so what are our target proportions? And each firm will have a different target for how much they want to have in debt, and how much they want to have in stock, and how much they want to have in preferred stock. So there's going to be target proportions, and the firm is going to try to maintain that proportion from period to period. So they don't want to take on so much debt that suddenly the majority of their capital is from debt, unless that is what they consistently use as their capital structure model. And so when we look at this capital structure, we've got some debt, we've got some equity, we may have some preferred stock, and we have to understand that each of these funding sources costs something different. Debt doesn't cost the same thing that equity costs, and that doesn't cost the same thing that preferred stock costs. Each has a different cost, but when we spend the firm's money, we aren't necessarily taking those funds out of one particular source. We have to calculate what funding overall costs for the firm, what it costs overall. So the weighted average cost of capital gives us an overall rate that we can use. Even though we know that each funding source costs something different, the weighted average gives us a number that we can apply to all projects so that it will cover our cost of debt, our cost of equity, our cost of preferred stock. Now, there are other videos, so I don't want to repeat the same information. There's some other videos posted this week that are going to go through the exact calculations. The exact calculations also are in your textbook. We're looking at chapter 13 this week. And so all the calculations for how to calculate what debt costs, how to calculate what equity costs, how to calculate what preferred stock costs are all in these other videos and in your textbook. Some things I do just want to point out while I have you is some things to keep in mind. When you make these calculations, remember that debt is the only one that has a tax benefit. So the stated price of debt is going to be more than the actual cost of debt. Because where there's a tax benefit for interest payments, debt is a little bit cheaper than the stated cost. So when you calculate what debt costs, part of that calculation is to determine the tax benefit, and so you get the actual net cost of the debt. And that only applies to debt. New common stock, new issues of stock costs or have flotation costs. These are those transactional costs for the new issue. And so if part of the funding is to sell new common stock, you'll also have to calculate the effective flotation costs. And that only happens on a new stock. If you're using just retained earnings, you don't have those flotation costs to worry about. And so I want to look quickly at the assignment that you're going to do this week, and it is pretty long. So again, before you start this, I want to make sure you look at all the videos that are there that will provide you with tips to get this started, and follow this concept connections in chapter 13. It kind of walks you through a problem just like the one you're going to have here. And you might also want to print this page so you can have it in front of you and not have to keep switching back and forth, or just open two separate windows so that you can keep this one, or two separate Excel windows so you can keep this open as you work through the other problems. But as you can see, there's a lot of information here. And so you're just going to work on it bit by bit. So you see in part A, you're going to calculate the book value of debt, market value of debt, the value of preferred stock, a lot of information here. And don't adjust any of these cells. Keep them just like they are, because the formulas this will make it easier for you to enter your formulas because it's kind of spelled out for you. If you notice here where I've got the parentheses and multiplication signs already here, if you go through this systematically and just step by step, using the information that's given and your formulas in your book, following this concept connections problem in chapter 13, this will go really smoothly for you. And so you've got 5 parts here, so make sure you get to each one of these. But again, if you follow it piece by piece and use the chapter 13 as a guide, it walks you all the way through that. If you do come up with any questions about this, feel free to give me a call or an email. I'm available 7 days a week by email, and I'm also on Blackboard IM during the office hours that I have posted. So I will look forward to seeing you in the discussion area, and have a great week 8.